is as American as apple pie. We love to win in the USA, and that's why you need to listen today to the We Win Injury Law Show. At We Win Injury Law, not only do we want to help you through this most difficult time, but we know how to do it. It's We Win Injury Law. Now it's time for the show.
Good morning, Andy. That's Friday morning. We are here back in St. George after being in Miami. Before we start and get into the whole introduction, thank you for listening to the We Win Injury Law radio show. But I want to throw something out there because we're going to talk about something really, really important today. And I'm going to change up some names for sake of, we have attorney-client confidentiality. But let's call her Linda. Okay, Linda. Linda was wronged by her doctor. She suffered a malpractice action about 2.5 years ago when her doctor cut her whatever. Let's just say she cut her whatever, okay? Since that time, she's had multiple surgeries, multiple issues to correct it with tons of problems, okay? Then we have Karen. And, well, Karen could be, was that a good word? Good name? Karen?
Don't use Karen.
Let's call her Karen. Karen had surgery also 2.5 years ago, okay, which left her paralyzed permanently. And these are real people. We've changed the names, but these are real people. These are real clients. Only one of them can recover against her doctor. Okay? Both 2.5 years ago. One with surgery, which required multiple surgeries. The other left her paralyzed. Okay? Both approximately 2.5 years ago. One can recover, the other cannot. And we want to talk about why the one can and why the other can't later in the show. But before we get to that, I'm Tyler Todd at We Win Injury Law Radio. Wait, We Win Injury Law, not the radio show. We're here at the radio show, but We Win Injury Law. I'm here with Jaron, the Snow Canyon Man Sandberg, and Jimmy P. Stephen James Park. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning.
Hey, we're glad to be here. We're glad that like I said, we had just come back from Miami, 80 degrees. We were down there at the National Trial Lawyer Summit Conference, learning, sharpening our tools to become better trial lawyers, better advocates, better representatives of all of our clients here in Southern Utah. And as awesome as Miami was, and it's fantastic being at the beach, as much as we could, going to meetings.
My wife spent a lot more time at the beach than I did.
Let's be honest.
Let's be fair.
They did. And so, but being back in Southern Utah and being back here in St. George, the sun is shining. It's a little chilly, but we're glad to be back. And every time we come back, you realize, and for anybody that's listening who travels, it's awesome to travel, and I love travel. But when you come back home and you come back to Southern Utah, you remember why we live in Southern Utah.
Oh yeah, it's definitely a big change from, and for me especially, big city Miami. I'm from St. George, born and raised, and I've seen this town grow. And we always joke like, "Oh, St. George is becoming such a big town." You go to South Beach. That's a big town.
It's a big city. Well, and obviously when you go to these conferences, there's a lot of vendors. There's a lot of different companies trying to get your business. And there was one particular vendor named Carvertise. And they wanted to pitch us on, hey, get your logo and your brand on all these different Uber and Lyft drivers. And it's a great way to advertise and get your name out there. And my immediate response was, I think we have like 5 of those. I think we have more and more now. No disrespect to the Uber and Lyft drivers out there, but I don't know how many we have. I don't know if we have very many. I don't know if we have a thriving Uber and Lyft community in St. George. We're getting there.
But it's not like when we were, in a big city, you have 40 options of which car you want to pick.
Right. I mean, you hit
St. George, you
hit confirm, and you have a driver within 30 seconds.
We've done it before, just looking at the airport, and sometimes you have a 35, 40-minute wait before your Uber driver can be there to your house.
Yeah, but it's awesome. But one thing I will say, and this is another big question we get, if you're involved in an accident in an Uber and Lyft, what's the process? And so many times, especially even ourselves, we found ourselves over the last several days in Miami doing this. When you get into an Uber and a Lyft or a ride share type of vehicle, you just, for some reason, you don't put on your seatbelt because you feel like you're or naturally, right? Is that?
You should always wear your seatbelt.
Thank you, Jim. You should always wear your seatbelt. But for some reason, when you're in like a commercial vehicle, like a van or a bus, you naturally, I think you have this tendency not to put on a vehicle or your seatbelt. If you get into a rideshare vehicle, and because a lot of us go down to Las Vegas or other places or travel, put your seatbelt on always.
Yeah, and I think some of it too is you're kind of in a mad dash from the airport. You're trying to get to your hotel. Normally, that's for a lot of people. If you're going somewhere fun, that's your only Uber ride, or to the cruise ship or whatever. But you're kind of like, you're always stuffing into a vehicle that doesn't have quite the capacity. It's always smaller than advertised.
You have your bags and your backpacks because your other luggage might
I think that's part of it. You're like in your, those airport, drives that are in front of all the terminals. They're super busy. You got people honking. I just think you hurry and jump in a car and you just forget.
And that's a great point. So just when you have your bags and you're in a hurry and you're in a rideshare vehicle, whether it be Uber or Lyft, put your seatbelts on.
I'd like to propose change. A quick shout out to Tammy over at Shaman CBD. She called out the other day and she's like, I'm their biggest fan. And only because she knew our tagline, right? And our tagline is always leave early, slow down, and leave early. And I'd like to say, and buckle up.
And buckle up.
Yeah.
Leave early, slow down, and buckle up. Yep. Yeah, and it's just, for some reason, and we talked about this on the last show, how sometimes there are people who want to spite your beeping car, and you don't put on the seatbelt just to spite your vehicle. Like, I'm going to show you Ford, or I'm going to show you Chevy. That makes absolutely no sense. Leave early, slow down, and buckle up.
Buckle up.
Thank you, Tammy, for listening, and thank you for all those that called into our show or into the office last time when we talked about our tagline. We couldn't give a gift card to everybody. There were people that actually did call first, and I failed to mention something on our last show. If we ever ask you to call into our show or to the office and make a comment based on what we asked during the show, please don't do that while you're driving. Please make sure it's at a later time. Be safe on the road. Watch. I love the St. George Police Department's tagline, watch your six, drive safely. Our tagline, leave early, slow down, and let's add, buckle up. It makes a ton of sense.
I like the addition of buckle up.
Yeah, and don't spite your vehicle manufacturer. Buckle up, okay? All right, let's go back to, and if you're listening to the We Win Injury Law radio show. I'm Tyler Todd. We have Jaron Sandberg. We have Jim Park, Stephen James, Jimmy P. Park, and our number, if you're, because a lot of times people wonder, what's your number? 435-688-9558. Please call us if you have a question or if you've been seriously injured. The consultations are always free. Let's go back to Karen and, did I say Linda? Linda. Yeah, Linda. Okay, so one had multiple surgeries, okay, from a surgery gone wrong and then required multiple surgeries to fix it 2.5 years ago or so, approximately. The other had a surgery with we believe, an error, okay, that left her paralyzed.
Also 2.5 years ago.
Also approximately 2.5 years ago. And so the question was, one can recover against the doctor and the other cannot. Why is that? Jaron? Jim?
I know the answer.
Jim?
I know the answer as well.
Statute of limitations.
You guys, it's called the statute of limitations, okay? And so when we get calls into our office, and we get a number of calls that bring up these very scenarios, and it happens often, more often than I would like, because oftentimes the answer is you can no longer recover against that particular doctor or against or against an at-fault party. Okay, it doesn't have to be a medical malpractice action. It's called the statute of limitations. And so in that scenario where one can recover and the other cannot, one, okay, contacted a lawyer, contacted our office, and when she knew or should have known that there was a mistake made, okay? And so in medical malpractice actions here in the state of Utah, not only do you have to file an action, but you also have to file what's called a notice of claim. And that notice of claim has to be filed with the state of Utah, with the Department of Professional Licensing, and you have to start what's called a pre-litigation panel process. Okay, and that is super, super important that you do that within, and that's what's the statute of limitations?
So this is the perfect answer for Utah. It depends on which hospital.
Okay, that also is very important. And why is that, Jaron?
So most cases, generally, you have this 2-year window. 2 year from when you knew or should have known.
So if you're listening right now to the We Win Injury Law radio show, that is really the most definite answer. For medical malpractice actions in Utah, the statute of limitations, meaning when you have to file a claim, it's 2 years. You have 2 years from the time you knew or should have known. Okay, but you're describing why there's a difference.
Now, the exception is if you're traveling to visit your family up north and you happen to find yourself at any hospital affiliated with University of Utah, you now run into the governmental immunity statute, which now has a 1-year statute of limitations.
So my mom just had a procedure at the University of Utah, and the results were not what we wanted. And that's been a struggle for me as I've been watching my mom recover and deal with some post-operative issues of which she had at the University of Utah. And one, just from a critical analysis, and that's what we do, right? And
you put your attorney hat on sometimes.
I've put my attorney hat on. One, I'm a son, and I'm a bit frustrated. And two, we handle these types of cases, so I've been looking at it from that. We know with those glasses on. But being at the University of Utah, immediately my mind that's triggered we have 1 year if we want to look at this from a medical malpractice perspective.
And this even counts, guys, if they're like a professor at the University of Utah medical facility, but they have an off-site clinic. It still runs afoul of that 1 year trigger date that you have to file. And so, and we get a lot of calls. That's one of the first questions we ask is, well, when did this happen? Or when did you become aware that this happened? Because sometimes you don't know.
Yeah, and that, let us be clear. The statute reads when you knew or should have known about the potential wrong. And that can be hard to identify. And that's why we always say, if there has been something that you feel has been wrong, and a lot of times it's in your gut, you just kind of know, but you want to have a definitive answer, call us. The consultation is always free, and certainly run the scenario by us, and we'll give you that, at least our opinion, because it's when you knew or should have known. Yeah. And that can sometimes be hard. And
there's some things you can look for. For example, most IHC hospitals, if risk management is talking to you, and that's a specific kind of arm of the hospital, if you have risk management talking to you, it's almost always an indicator that something has gone wrong. It still might not mean you have a case, but it's a pretty good indicator that something went wrong that shouldn't have.
And we'll be the first to say, we love our doctors. We have a lot of doctor friends. I have many family and friends that are doctors. I love our doctors. Okay? The practice of medicine is just that. It's the practice of medicine. It's not the perfect practice of medicine. And similar to the practice of law. It's not the perfect practice of law. It's the practice. We're all doing our best, I believe. But there are scenarios when mistakes have been made and the standard of care has been breached. And that's key.
Yeah, and, let me just throw this out. This is another... We've talked about speaking the language, right? personal injury, sometimes the easiest way that a carrier or provider can get out of paying for damages is statute of limitations. I mean, that's the first thing they'll look at if it's an age claim whatsoever. And so it's important, and we're talking about medical malpractice in this scenario, but and as Jaron indicated, it depends, right? I mean, there's all these governmental exclusions and exceptions, and there's different statute of limitations for a car accident or a bus accident by a state-operated bus, and it's important to speak the language. So if you have any questions, please reach out to us. I mean, it's important to have someone on your side who knows the language, can speak the language, and has the knowledge and experience, because it gets tricky pretty quick. So if you have any questions, please reach out to us and let us evaluate it. Let you know if you do have a case.
No dumb question. And it's 435-688-9558, our number, or we have an engaged chat bot or it's like an engaged texting, whatever, on our website, wewininjurylaw.com. There's no stupid question. And you said something, Jim, that triggered something that I think is super important. The insurance companies, the doctors, the risk management teams, like you mentioned, or whether it's a car accident, no one's going to tell you, by the way, the clock's ticking, you need to do something about it, take action against us. No one's going to tell you that.
Well, and one of the calls I wanted to just touch on, because this actually happened fairly recent with our office. I got a call. They'd actually been negotiating with the insurance carrier for one of our cities here locally, guys. They'd been negotiating their claim, pretty significant injuries, and they called me up saying at the 1 year mark, they stopped talking to me. Why? And that was exactly it, was the statute of limitations had ran to file a notice of claim. Now, there's some other things that you can look at, whether what they actually had been communicating, maybe told some of that time, but they ran up against it because they hadn't done anything.
Yeah, and unfortunately, and that's a great point, they're not going to tell you, because that one, it's not their job, and two, obviously they are self-interested in such a way that they're not going to remind you to do that. And that is why you need an attorney and an advocate on your side that speaks the language, that will just give you that, hey, you have a case? No. Oh, when did this happen? Whoa, we better jump on this immediately. Or we will also tell you, you may have had a case. Unfortunately, the statute of limitations has run, and there's not much you can do.
Yeah. And for car accidents, what's the normal Utah rule for car accidents?
In Utah, this is also very important. In Utah, the statute of limitations is 4 years. Okay, and there's not really any good arguments on when you knew or should have known on that one. If you've been in a car accident, everybody knows when that statute starts to run, and it is 4 years from the date of that accident. Now, that is to file a lawsuit, okay? And sometimes it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to resolve your claim in 4 years, and a lot of you might be thinking, wow, 4 years to resolve a claim? Well, sometimes yes, because depending on the amount of injuries and the treatment length and the dispute in whether the accident in fact caused the injuries that you're complaining of, sometimes cases can take 4 years or longer. But if you're in that negotiation phase, kind of like you were mentioning with the city on the 1 year statute, you have to file that lawsuit in that 4 year period, or guess what? The negotiations stop, and they will stop, because they're going to say, gotcha. And this is also very important. Jim, you can speak to this a little bit better than most because you're also licensed in Nevada. The statute of limitations, if you travel down to Las Vegas for entertainment or business, the statute of limitations in Las Vegas for a car accident is
2 años.
2 years. So you guys, listen, if in Arizona, and we're in Arizona. Arizona is only half an hour away. That also is different. Okay? So if you have an accident, you've been injured, or you have a medical malpractice action, contact us, because the statute of limitations is vital to your case and whether you can recover injuries or damages for your injuries. Okay? So, back to Linda and Karen. On one, we had to tell one we could not help her because the statute we believe had run, and two, on the other, we're still battling the malpractice action for her and her family, and that is ongoing in litigation, and we can't talk too much about it, but
we did all of the things that were required to preserve that claim and to preserve that statute of limitations.
And hopefully eventually get justice for her and her family. And in our world, justice is money, because nothing's going to put her back together. I mean, we think Humpty Dumpty immediately comes to mind, right? All the king's men and all the king's horses tries to put Humpty back together again. Well, it's really hard to put Humpty back together again when you've suffered at the hands of a doctor who's breached the standard of care, and you don't put Humpty back together again. In order to get justice, you have to, and I'm talking to all of you, justice is money. And so please don't cringe. Please don't immediately think that, the lawyers that are doing that are bad people. No, we're fighting for her and her family for justice.
And most of these numbers, guys, aren't based on just some number me and Tyler whip out of a hat, or Jim just thinks up one night like, I think it's worth $2 million.
Or you Google it.
Yeah.
There's a lot of, and I hear that a lot too. People Google it. What's my case worth? And there are some Google calculators out there and some websites that are out there. They're going to tell you, like, what's my case worth? 3 times medicals. And there are some components to that. But
on a very basic
level. But that's not how damages, or what we say, I call them damages.
People might not know what damages is.
Pain and suffering, lost wages, future lost earnings, a number of things. Those are how we calculate what your case is worth. Okay.
And so when I get a quick question right after someone's been in a really bad accident, we'll get that question a lot. And I hate giving the attorney answer that it depends, but some of it is, your case is worth more if you're more injured or more adverse things like losing your job, or you can't keep working in your same profession. Those kind of things obviously would make your case worth more. But those are things we have. Those are kind of secondary to, when did this happen? That statute of limitations question is the first one our staff will ask you. That's what we ask. That's one of the very first things we establish.
And if you have questions, contact us, 435-688-9558, or you can go to our website, wewininjurylaw.com. There are no stupid questions. Again, to kind of recap, statute of limitations for medical malpractice actions here in the state of Utah, 2 years. Okay, you guys, it's 2 years. If you may have a claim against the University of Utah or any state-affiliated hospital, it's 1 year.
Or like a City of St. George employee truck hits you.
Or a car accident against the city. That's a great one. We have a case right now. It's 1 year that you have to bring that claim. So contact us, 435-688-9558, wewininjurylaw.com. We are here for you. We are here to fight for you. We are here to win for you, period. So until next time, I'm Tyler Todd. I have Jaron Sandberg. We have Jim Park. Our staff is amazing. We are here for you. We win injury law. We win for you, period. Until next time, you guys, stay classy, St. George.